Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton, and this show is sponsored by Manscaped, manscaped.com. Now, I know it's 13 days or so days until Christmas. You might not have got a gift for somebody. Let me help you out. Get 20% off at manscaped.com and free shipping with the promo code AFC South. Again, 20% off manscaped.com plus free shipping with the promo code AFC South. Consider it my Christmas gift to you. Of course, on this episode, we're going to talk about the Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans in a game that's going to be happening in Nashville with the Tennessee Titans wearing the Love You Blue uniforms versus the Houston Texans, which I'm pretty sure that's got a lot of buzz going down in Houston. But, my guest for this episode is definitely the queen of Houston in media, of course. That would be Kim Watt Davis. How you doing?
I'm good, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing great. And, of course, we're going to get into Houston and talk about the Texans versus the Titans. But like every episode, I open up the show with the Get It Off Your Chest segment. Now, usually it's something on my mind that, it's bothering me or something of that nature. And this is actually bothering me. So I wanted to kind of get this out there. And, for those that know me and that you created this show, not only was it to talk about sports, but it also was to create a safe place for Black women to express themselves in sports as well. And every March, I have Women's History Month. I make it a point to highlight Black women. The reason why I'm kind of mentioning that is because, of course, something recently happened, and those that have looked at my Facebook, they saw me address it there. But I kind of wanted to address this on my show, and, I didn't feel like I was living up to the standard that I had for myself in my show. Long story short, had a little bit of a discussion about officiating and kind of, with a fellow journalist, and, I made her feel a certain way, or came at her a certain way, was perceived that way. Now, of course, I was horrified because that's not me. That's not who I am. And, of course, I reviewed my sentences before I even approached. So I actually went back and looked at it. And then I actually approached before anyone approached me to make sure. I was like, oh, I don't know, maybe that sounded a little, away. So I kind of talked to that person. Of course, we talked. I did apologize and definitely, said what I had to say in terms of, what I did not mean to do, which I'm not going to disrespect a woman or a fellow journalist, and that's not who I am. That's not my personality. That's not what I will ever be. And, I definitely had to address that and call myself out in terms of that. If I did, I'm not saying if I did. I did. I'm not going to go throw the if in there because it's not my feelings or my thoughts that are involved. It's me affecting someone else's thoughts or feelings and not respecting those. And, for that, I definitely wanted to, this opening of the show, kind of apologize for that again. And also, say that is not who I am and my character as well. And, definitely wanted to kind of address that to open the show today. But yeah, I'm done. I'm done, Kim.
Okay. Well, listen, I think, first of all, kudos to you, because you said if someone felt a way, then you want to address that. It's not an if. But, I haven't known you a very long time, but in the time that I've gotten to know you, and I think people who know you and know your energy and follow your work probably know that that's not your intent. And the fact that you owned it in the way you did, it just confirms, the nature and the character of who you are. So good for you.
Yeah, I definitely thought a lot about it and kind of struggled with thinking about them replaying the whole words and things like that too. But I definitely that's just me. I'm a very conscientious person just in general. So that's just who I am, and that's that's not in that situation. That's of course I'm not saying that's who I am, but I definitely want to address the situation as well, and definitely call myself to the carpet because I can't call somebody else to the carpet if I can't do that, to the man in the mirror as well. But kind of moving on in the show, we're going to talk about the Houston Texans. Now, it was a rough one last week against the
Whew.
New York Football Jets. Yeah, I really said the New York Football Jets. They usually say that about the
You
Giants, but
did.
anyway. The Texans were surprisingly, of course, 7-5 going into that game against the Jets, and everyone was talking about Zach Wilson and him reluctantly wanting to take the quarterback position again. And well, he not only took it, but he took it and ran with it. 27-36, 301 yards, 2 touchdowns in a 30-6 win versus the Houston Texans. Now, first thing I want to ask before we get into that, is there any update on CJ Stroud and his ability or how he's kind of going through concussion protocol right now?
So, we have availability with the coach and some players on Monday. They never have any updates because on Monday they're getting screened and filmed and MRIs because they had a lot of guys banged up. But we won't hear anything about CJ until practice tomorrow. But D'Amico addressed it yesterday, and there's no expectation. He didn't just come out and say it, but that CJ played this weekend. For him to most times now guys are in the protocol for a couple of weeks. So I would, maybe in the game against Cleveland, he's closer to a game time decision. I'd be shocked if he played this weekend. I don't think that's the expectation because they really do want to make sure that he's healthy and okay. So that's the update. It's not official. It's just my thoughts. We'll get our first kind of a, update on tomorrow, but I'm pretty sure that you're going to be in somebody else as a signal caller on Sunday.
Oh, we may see a Davis Mills signing. Oh boy, but
Or
but
there's also a guy on the roster named Case Keenum, and so while Davis Mills is technically 2 on the depth chart, it's about who gives him the best chance of winning, and so tomorrow's practice will be interesting to see who's getting how many snaps. This is going to be a very interesting week. It'll probably be closer to, I guess, a game time decision or, not before Friday, if then, but we'll see. But it will not be CJ Stroud. That I feel confident in saying.
Gotcha. I was kind of thinking it might not be him just because this year with the concussion protocol, there hasn't been very many players, if any, that have played the next week. There's one I believe that's played.
David Carr.
Yes. No, Derek Carr.
But
Derek
yeah,
Carr.
it has. I mean, Derek Carr. Yeah, David Carr. He played here. But yeah, Derek Carr. Yeah, it hasn't happened. And if you go back and look at that, I mean, it's you don't want to take any chances, and so better safe, than spray. So hold him out. It's just not worth it.
Right. What of course, going into the game, I actually was pretty high on the Houston defense. Kind of talk about the Houston New York Jets game, but I was high on the Houston defense, the effort they showed, the kind of different defenses. Like for example, I was looking at one play. I look at the all 22 quite frequently, so I was looking at it. And one play, they had zone on the front side of the defense, and I'm sorry, man to man on the front side and zone on the back side of the defense, which I thought was very good. And in terms of mixing up the coverages and things like that. But it just seemed like whatever they were throwing out Sunday, New York Jets were looking at it and throwing it right back at them to the tune of 301 yards from Zach Wilson, like I mentioned earlier. What is there any kind of feeling about this defense after that type of performance against a Jets team that's been struggling offensively?
So a couple of things in terms of the defense. It was disappointing, and after the game, Rip was asked D'Amico, so what's the positive you take away? And he said that it's over. I mean, there was really no positive in that game on Sunday. Uh, and this defense, even to a man, when we talked to them, I wasn't in New York, but I was over there yesterday, and so talked to a couple of defensive players who said, you know they just it really is about execution. And so no, I mean, I think one of the key things, and Sheldon Rankins, who plays on the defensive line, said, look, we're not going to panic. You know who we are. We did not have the outcome we wanted, and we didn't deserve it. Like, they all know it, because we didn't play well. But in terms of rethinking who they are as a defense, one of the things, Mike, that has been is disturbing about this young Texans team, right? Because they are kind of once again starting this rebuild, although nobody really wants to use the rebuild word. If you had said at the beginning of the season, Kim, they're going to be 7-5 going into Tennessee and still really have a shot, not just the division. I'm not saying it's likely, but numerically a shot, and definitely a shot at the playoffs, I'd go, yeah, maybe not this year, maybe next year. So I think they've already, I mean, they clearly have already exceeded expectations. And with that, I think people may have gotten a little ahead of themselves. I talked about this team having some, there's some good things about the team. The best thing about it is probably D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud, but it still does lack some depth. So, which has not really much to do with how the defense played on Sunday. I cannot explain it to you. They cannot really explain it either. I don't think you're going to see that kind of a performance this weekend when they come into Tennessee. But here's the thing that has been, if you follow this Texans team, and I know you have because you know all things AFC South, they go into Carolina, they go into Atlanta, they go into New York. Those are all games that really you expect them to win. They had, you're like, okay, you should win those games. And those are all games they lost. And so I think that's the thing. That reminds you of how young they are. And I say young in terms of being a unit. I mean, there's some veterans on this team, but, being able to beat the teams you're supposed to beat and not just have heroics against other teams, that's been a challenge. You don't really see it 2 weeks in a row. And I think it'll be a different look when they get to, Tennessee this weekend. Remember, though, D'Amico and Saleh worked together in San Francisco, right? They both were on that squad, and D'Amico credits Robert Saleh a lot with him being where he is. And here's something I want to mention about Zach Wilson, like the much maligned Zach Wilson, right? I say maligned. He hasn't played well. And guys in the league will tell you that people on the other team, on other teams, and although their records aren't great, they're NFL players too. You remember why Zach Wilson was selected in the draft. All that to say, one of the ESPN reporters that covers the Jets last week said he was talking to a player, in the locker room one day, and talking about Zach Wilson, who said, you know what? I don't really what do I have to lose? Like, I'm just going to go out and just basically sling it. My words, not his, right? What do I have to lose? What are they going to do? Bench me? I mean, And so he said, I'm just going to go and play. And that's what he did. And this Texans team seemed to be caught flat-footed in the second half. It just was painful to watch.
Yeah.
But no, to answer your question in a long way, I think people are out on the defense, but are they missing some pieces? Yeah, but I thought that the whole season. I thought they've exceeded expectations, but they've got some roster challenges, in my opinion.
Definitely have. I mean, it'll be interesting just to see how everything kind of develops with a full off season and probably some cash too. But one other guy that was actually injured in this game was Nico Collins. Now, this is the first game they're playing without Tank Dell. And so I was interested to see how the offense would look. And, without Tank Dell and then Nico Collins early, the offense didn't really look quite as explosive. That to go along with you're playing against the New York Jets defense, and it was just a pretty
Right.
bad day. Was that just more of a reflection of the offense and where they are now, missing Tank Dell and now Nico Collins, or more the Jets defense just dominating like they've been doing most of the season?
So I think it's probably a combination. And Tank did miss another game earlier in the season when he was out. But so you're without Tank, right? It's not just what you get on the field. He is also, um, you know, like this leader that kind of galvanizes them, and especially that wide receiver room. So you're without Tank, you lose Nico early. You're still without Dalton Schultz, which has been he's been a key to some of the things that have been happening for this team offensively. And quite frankly, on Sunday, the rest of the receivers never really were able to get any separation. So yes, credit the Jets defense who did to the Texans what they've done to other quarterbacks and teams. And then also look at the fact that this team was without its top two receivers or top three receivers. If you throw in also, if you go Tank, Nico, and Dalton Schultz, those are big losses. Maybe Schultz gets back this week. I thought it was close last week. We may see Dalton on Sunday. Not sure about Nico. He had a calf injury. He had that injury previously this year when he went out. So we'll see what happens with him as well.
Gotcha. Sound like it definitely was a week of not necessarily living up to the expectation or the risen expectation, and then a week of injuries as well. But it always brings the best out of both teams when the Texans and the Titans see each other. We're going to talk about that matchup and more after this commercial break on Score in the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton.
A shift. A shift is something that happens and changes the dynamics. And that's what happened when Garrett Logistics was born. After 10 years as a sales pro in the logistics world of sporting goods, John Garrett decided to pivot to the world of freight and start a brokerage. So you're saying to yourself, why trust Garrett Logistics? Well, Garrett Logistics helps shippers improve overall workflow, along with increased on-time pickup and delivery percentages. Last-minute loads, multi-drop pickups, and more are part of the services with Garrett Logistics. They're available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all times Central Standard Time. So give them a ring at 615-400-8484. That's 615-400-8484, or you can email them at john@garrettlogistics.co or visit their website at garrettlogistics.co. Garrett Logistics, where the motto is, it's not just freight to us, it's your business.
All right, and we are back. And like I mentioned before, two teams that seem to bring out the best in each other no matter what their records are. Bless you. No matter what their records are. That would be the Tennessee Titans and the Houston Texans. Now, of course, last year, I believe last year, of course, it was an interesting year seeing these two teams face off against each other. The year before that, you saw a few different things happen too. But, it just seems like something interesting always happens. And this year, the Titans decided to break out the Love Your Blue uniforms with the Houston Texans coming to town. Now, first off, I have to ask, how does that go over in Houston, especially with them wearing these uniforms against the Houston Texans?
So it didn't go over well. You don't hear a lot about it this week, but when it came out at the start of the season that this was the plan, that the Titans were going to wear the Columbia Blue, the Love Your Blue uniforms, and wear them when the Texans were in town. Yeah, there was a lot of chatter about it. So now there's not a lot because I don't think people are really dialed into it. Like, oh yeah, this is the week they're gonna wear them. The other thing that happened, Mike, is that the University of Houston football team wore kind of a throwback look, right? They wore that blue, and the Titans complained, and so they were, the league came down on them for that, and people were like, seriously, Tennessee. But there's enough rivalry. I don't want to say bad blood, but between these two teams, that only just kind of adds fuel to the fire, quite frankly. But when it came about, at the start of the season, it was a lot of conversation. I did a couple TV shows here, and that was one of the conversations about the uniforms and what do you think? But I haven't heard much this week.
Gotcha. I'm pretty sure on
it's
Sunday.
Also only Tuesday, so yeah.
Right. I was gonna say on Sunday, I'm pretty sure the chatter will return once again.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but, probably later in the week it'll return.
Definitely. But getting into this game, of course, Will Levis and the Titans are coming into this game with one of probably the best comebacks this season. Down 14 points with about 3 minutes and 46 seconds left. They come back from a 27-13 deficit and win against the Miami Dolphins in Miami. Now, of course, Levis had a game in his own right. Over 300 yards. Of course, he had an interception. Did have a touchdown pass as well, but he definitely showed a few things. So with him showing a few things against this Miami Dolphins defense. Now, just to give everyone a heads up, the Miami Dolphins probably have the best cornerback tandem in the NFL, Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey, by the way. That's who he did this against. So with this happening, is there a level of concern amongst the Texans with how Levis performed and what he could potentially do against this Houston Texans defense? Of course, with what happened last week.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a level of concern. I mean, what I've noticed from this team all season is that they take, each week they talk about the challenges ahead of them, and so I don't think they take any of them lightly. But they definitely aren't going to be overly concerned, right? Because while he had a great week last week, they opened the season on the road against the Ravens. They've played some guys that are talented and have been doing for a while. They've faced some really good quarterbacks, right? They, whatever you think about Russell Wilson, he's not done yet. So they've seen some guys. So I don't know that there's an extra concern that there's Will Levis. I think they'll be prepared for what it is he can do. That, and so it should be an interesting game plan. D'Amico is the head coach. He's also the play caller on defense. And yeah, he didn't take kindly to them getting beat because they couldn't get out of their own way, right? Because they didn't show up the way that they all think they should. And so I expect a very different performance from the Texans defense this weekend.
Now, as far as what they need to do now, of course, the Titans' offensive line has been talked about a lot this season, and not necessarily in a great way because of all the pressure they've allowed. So does that kind of with Jonathan Grenard and you got Will Anderson? Do you see? I would say there could be definitely some potential opportunities for them to make some splash plays getting to Will Levis. But one thing I also will mention is Will Levis has been a person that stands in the pocket and he'll take a hit to deliver a deep pass, even if it's coming right at him. So it's a lot of different opportunities available for those two, Grenard and Will Anderson as well. Now, Will Anderson's a little banged up too, correct?
Yeah, he got a little banged up in the game on Sunday. He stayed on the sideline. The first injury report doesn't come out until tomorrow, so don't really know where he is. You can't say, oh, it didn't look bad, but I don't really know. We won't know anything until, like I say, tomorrow, because on Mondays, while most people are like, okay, we get our first update, but you're not going to get any update about injury on Mondays. You're not going to get anything until Wednesday because they've got to, they're just really figuring out what's wrong with them. I think that the thought is that he should be okay, that he should be able to go. That's from somebody who's seen no medical report, right? But you mentioned Jonathan Grenard. He's having a really good season. He got into the double-digit sack run this past Sunday, 10.5 sacks. The last time the Texans had someone with double-digit sacks was in 2018, and that was J.J. Watt. So, and we talked to Jonathan yesterday, and he said, listen, it's great as a personal milestone. He said he had some plays where, he wished he could get back, right? But he wasn't able to contain the guy. None of them feel good about the performance. And so, but the pass rush has sometimes been something that is not been as aggressive as I'm sure their head coach would like. And so we'll see what happens. We'll see how they come, but I expect you to, the front, you'll see it from Jonathan Grenard. You mentioned some different coverages they mix up, maybe a man on the front end and zone on the back. They're gonna do some different things, and it should be fun. You got Vrabel, who's a defensive minded head coach, and we'll see how they mix it up and what happens on Sunday. But I think you will see a very different Texans team all the way around, regardless of who is in it at running. I mean, at quarterback, just from a level of not just execution, but just the approach and intensity that seemed to be lacking. They seemed to be flat from the beginning of that game. I don't think you're going to see that on Sunday.
Okay. All right. Now, of course, the Texans have, definitely, they've done a few things in terms of defensively. They made some plays, and you have your veterans sprinkled in. Your Denzel Perrymans, your Jimmy Wards, but of course, you do have to look at the young guys like the Derek Stingley's and the Petries,
Jalen Petrie.
Well.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I still think Jalen Petrie has all pro potential. I'm just not for sure what necessary. To me, it seems like he's been a little quieter this year. Is that just me just seeing it from the outside looking in?
Yeah, I think, he's in a different scheme, right? And one of the areas that he has struggled at times has just been tackling, right? And to me, that's fundamentals, right? You just gotta, that's been an area. Derek Stingley Jr., who had a lot of injuries, who's missed the first 6-8 weeks of the season on IR, was out, had some injury issues last year. And so, when you've been out for a while, you're starting to see what these guys can do. He had a couple picks, not this week against the Jets, but the previous week against Broncos. Was it the Broncos they played? I lose track. Yes. He had a couple picks. He had some tackles for losses. Pass defense. So he looked good. It was probably his best game as a pro, and he'd had 4 interceptions in 3 games. Which also means too, though, that they weren't throwing at the other side, which is where Steve Nelson is. He's respected, and so I'll be curious to see what the Titans do this weekend. Do you stay away from Nelson? Do you spread it out? Are you avoiding Stingley? I don't know. It's a really cool chess match.
Definitely. And speaking of a chess match, it's going to be a chess match when it comes to the Titans secondary versus the Texans. The Texans wide receivers. Now, of course, Robert Woods played here last year, so I'm pretty sure he's going to be interested in having a good showing coming back to town. But the biggest thing with the Titans secondary is they've been giving up a lot of big plays. They probably have given up the most big plays of any secondary in the NFL this year, at least 2 or 3 every game. With that being said, do you expect Bobby Slowick to kind of try to challenge that secondary, even with Nico Collins a little banged up with the calf, even with Tank Dell not out? Do you still expect them to kind of try to test that secondary down the field?
So I'm not really sure. And the reason I say that is because Slowick has been really great some games, and in other games not so much. It almost feels kind of like feast or famine, right? So I'm not really sure. He's been, innovative at times and just fun to watch the way he's called a game and the kind of positions he's put guys in. And then there are other games you're like, what are you doing? So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I imagine they will some, not as much as when you have a guy like CJ who's just so incredibly accurate, right? He can throw in the tight windows and put it on a dime. And so I don't know that you tested as much with Davis Mills or perhaps the Case Keenum, whoever it is, behind under center. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm as interested as you are to see what is the game plan offensively. And I also think it depends on who do they have. Like, who are you going into this game with? Do you have Nico? Do you have Dalton Schultz back? I mean, do you even have Kaimi Fairbairn? They've been without a kicker, for several weeks. He was on IR. So is Kaimi back this week? I mean, I've seen him around. I don't know the answer, but maybe. And so, yeah, there's a lot of question marks about availability and for Texans players, especially on the offense, and who might actually be on the field on Sunday.
It'll be interesting to see. But speaking of being on the field, let's just say that Davis Mills ends up being the guy to play quarterback. Now, of course, plenty have not seen him since a Colts game a while back. But in terms of like just regularly playing, let's say he actually is the starting quarterback and gets a lot of playing time. What can you realistically expect from him, being that he's been a backup all year, and this is a new offense for him?
It is a new offense. He was here through OTAs. He was here through mini camp and veterans camp, and he knows the offense. He's been here, and Davis Mills. The word that I used to say about him was that he's serviceable. And now he's going to have to possibly, because it could be Case Keenum. I mean, I know people are going, Kim, there's no way. I'm just saying, I was there yesterday, and D'Amico did not commit. D'Amico said, we're going to see, and right, we do have some guys that are veterans that have been around for a while. We're going to see who. Our decision will come down to who puts us in the best chance to win, to be successful. By him saying that, to me, means it's open, right? It's not automatically Davis Mills. I don't know. But, Davis Mills won a couple games they won 4 games last year, 3 games last year. And then they had a tie game, 4 games a year before. So he has tasted a little bit of what it feels like to win. And he's had some, a few good showings. That offensive line makes me nervous, especially without a guy like CJ, who does such a good job of like getting the ball out early and being able to, to navigate and move around in the pocket, although he's just taking some brutal hits. I don't know if that is what you get from Davis Mills. So if he's the guy, they could go in there and still be successful, but we'll see how they end up going about getting there.
I hear you there. Now, if I'm correct, Davis Mills went to Penn State. Am I correct there?
He's a Stanford guy.
Stanford. I don't know why I got him mixed up with Penn State.
Yeah.
I was thinking of another quarterback. I was thinking anyway, as far as the Stanford guy, the last Stanford quarterback I really remember actually doing some things would be Andrew Luck. Of course, he did play for the Indianapolis Colts, and he did play in the AFC South. So, they're
in the AFC South.
But yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting game. It's going to be, one team that's going one way, another team that's not necessarily the season they wanted in the Titans. But it's going to just be interesting just to see the passion in this game, the energy in this game. And of course, on social media, it's going to be interesting to hear how many jokes are made about the uniforms, because it's going to happen. I could expect it to happen. But we have reached the end of the show, but there is a game on this show.
Right.
It's 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. Are you ready?
I am. I was just looking to see the line. I'm not wanted to see what the early line is on the game. So Titans are 2.5-point favorites at home. Okay.
Well, they've only lost 1 game, and that was the Colts game in overtime. So I can definitely see how that's possible. Far as let's see, I'm going back to some old school R&B. You got 1 catalog.
Oh, wow.
1 catalog. You got to throw the other catalog away. Al Green or Teddy Pendergrass? Which one are you going with? Throwing the other away.
I'm going to go with Teddy Pendergrass.
Okay. All right. You do have to throw the Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes in there too with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the one I'm going with.
Okay. All right. We got Wimbledon or the U.S. Open. Which one would you like to watch more? That's tennis, folks, who are
Wow,
who don't know. That's tennis.
which is my sport, right? That's my sport that I play in college. They're so different. Am I watching them in person? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Which one am I going to go to?
Yeah, watching in person.
Hmm. Yeah, Wimbledon's so historic, but US Open is just it's. I'm going to go US Open. That's tough. That's
Okay.
not fair. I got to pick one of the two, but I'm going to go US Open. The energy at the Open is so different from Wimbledon. Although Wimbledon is always play, it's where it all starts, right? But I'm going to have to go with US Open.
Okay. All right. We're gonna go with a couple restaurants that are in actually Houston. We got Papa
Okay.
Do's or we got In-N-Out Burger. Which one are you going to?
I'm going to go to Papa Do's. I don't eat burgers, so I've never even been to In-N-Out Burger. It's not meat.
Oh man. You ain't had animal style. Okay. All right.
So Papa Do's for me. I eat seafood, but yeah, Papa Do's for me.
Yeah, the closest I've been to one in Papa Do's, I went to the one in Atlanta before. So that one, it was still good, but it isn't the one I would say probably in Houston. I bet that one is a little bit better than the one in Atlanta.
Come on to Houston so we can go to Papa Do's, Mike.
There we go. There we go. Got to catch this bird down there. Okay, but let's see. As far as which player did you enjoy watching more with the Houston Texans? Whitney Merciless or D'Amico Ryans?
Yeah, both great guys. Like them both, but it was D'Amico. It'd be D'Amico for me.
Okay.
Both wore
Even if he wasn't
59,
the head
same
coach?
number.
Even if he
Even
wasn't
if
the
he
head
wasn't the
coach?
head coach. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember covering Cap. He's got a different kind of energy and excitement about him. I mean, you see it on the sideline, right? He's that guy. Whitney Merciless is a great guy too. But if you're making me pick, kind of like Wimbledon US Open, I'm gonna go with D'Amico.
The funniest part about that is they both wore 59, like you said.
Yeah, they both wore 59.
And the last one, of course, you're going to relax. You're going to the beach or you're going to the pool?
I'm gonna go to the beach.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, we have finished up 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice, and we have reached the end of the show. Kim Wyatt Davis, thank you. Thank you again for coming on the show and dropping your expertise on the Houston Texans. I want to give you the floor now to tell everyone where they can find you on social media and all that you have going on. The floor is yours.
Well, first of all, thank you, Mike. It's always cool when you invite me. Our schedules are crazy because I also cover right. So sometimes evenings when you're taping are tough. But I love being on the show, right? I love what you're doing with touring the AFC South. So thank you. I'm always appreciative when someone shares their platform. So thank you for that. You can follow me on social media at Kim Y Davis on Instagram, Kim Y Davis Media on Twitter and Facebook. It's Kim Y Davis. Also on LinkedIn, you can follow me there. I do it every week called Chalk Talk. It's live on Tuesdays at 11 a.m., but there are replays on all the platforms from LinkedIn to Twitter to YouTube and Facebook, even Twitch. So I'm on all the platforms as well. And you can follow me there and keep up with what I'm doing. I cover Rockets, Astros, Texans, all things NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball. I mean, my gosh, I'm still wrapping my mind around that Shohei Ohtani contract. We'll talk about that another time. But that's what I do. And I'd love to have you drop in on the show sometime and visit with us. And I look forward to coming back and visit with you, Mike.
All right. Well, definitely I will accept that invitation. We'll definitely have to work that out. And thank you again for coming on the show. And yeah, Shohei Ohtani, he's on that Bobby Bonilla deal. That's all I can say.
Yeah. But better.
Yeah, definitely better. Definitely better. But we'll get into that, of course, another time. But of course, thank you everyone for tuning in. Of course, you can find Touring the AFC South on YouTube. You can find it on all listening platforms. Of course, it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, you name it, we are there. You can find me on the artist formerly known as Twitter at MikePatton82. That's MikePatton82. Of course, you can find me on Threads and on Instagram at that's THA, not THE, _general_MP. I want to thank you all again for tuning in to this episode. Go ahead, subscribe, rate the show, whether it's on Apple, whether it's on Spotify. 5 stars is definitely preferred. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode for the AFC South. We're out. Peace.